I request ma'am to take over the session. A very warm good afternoon to all of you. Good afternoon to all of you. Thank you so much. I literally mean warm, isn't it? Rather hot. So that wouldn't be appropriate word, so I said warm. But then I would really thank from bottom of my heart the wholeheartedly the whole organizing team, especially Dr. Vishwanath Swami sir, Dr. Sanat Kumar sir, and all the HODs and faculty of Daily Talk. It was really a fantastic experience and really overwhelming experience here on stage. Thank you very much, sir. It really motivated me to be here. Every time that I meet you guys, it's really a fantastic experience. Thank you for having me here. I'm really blessed to be associated with you. At the outset, I would like to first congratulate. Is this the mic? Yeah. Is that okay? Is this audible? I'm okay with this. Thank you so much. Thank you. At the outset, I would first congratulate the organizing team to have done a fantabulous job. Don't you all agree? It is really a very smart move, and I should congratulate all of you, the whole faculty, the whole team, the participants, the organizers, everyone over here in this hall, to have made it to this fantastic, marvelous event. And also to the two anchors who have been here. The two of them were splendid in their words and the job that they have been doing. The student who's looking after the media, of course, superbly done, and all of you, of course. I had no words to express. So having said that, let me tell you that the topic of choice, the theme of the conference also was a very thoughtful one and definitely would set the mode for all you young minds. So taking this opportunity to further take that motivation which Dr. Ganachari sir set off, you would all agree with me that it was such a motivating speech, even at this stage when probably I was sinking into the bottom of my thought, saying that no, enough, I won't read now. I won't go back to study. I won't try to upskill myself. Enough is enough. Are kitna karenge types. Isn't that so? At one point of time, you feel that you're so overburdened with responsibilities of whatever kind, be it family, personal, or professional. You want to end it somewhere. But having heard him today, I felt so bad for myself that I was trying to go into that zone where probably I don't need to update was what my thought. But then he started off, he started the conference with such beauty and such motivating words. So with that motivation, let's begin with this first session, that is biomedical ethics or ethics in biomedical research. So what I'm trying to tell you today is definitely the point of discussion about ethics in research. So you will have to pay a little bit of attention to me to understand this complicated kind of a situation. I would term it complicated now, but hope that it demystifies after the session. I request all of you to please look into my presentation carefully, jot down some points if you have any to clarify. You can as well raise your hands in between the session to ask me questions. Also note it down and we can have a word or two after the session, if time permits and if the organizers give us the chance. So to begin with, I'll take you to this story. I'm sure most of you have heard a kind of story like this. Wherever we talk about ethics in research or ethics pertaining to medical practice, this story comes up every time I have been in a situation where there is a dilemma. So the story came up in 1960s, brought about to the discussion of researchers by Philippa Foot. It's called the trolley problem. Anyone here who has heard of this problem, who heard of this story before? You can raise your hands. Yes, I can see there. Good. Yes, one or two of you definitely have heard of it, but for the benefit of others, let me tell you that imagine, look at this picture. Imagine there is a brakeless trolley, a train which is running brakeless, on a straight track. At the end of the track, there are 5 workers who are working on the track, and they are unaware that this trolley is brakeless and moving at a very fast speed. All right? You are the one who can control a switch. If you try to change the switch, the trolley's track can be changed from the straight line to a diverted parallel path. But the twist in the tale, on the diverted path, there is one worker there who also is equally unaware that the trolley is running that fast and there is no brake. Okay? You all got the plot, right? You'll have to do this so that I know you are with me. All right. So this is the situation. Now you are the one who are the game changer. You can switch the trolley's path, save 5 people but kill one. Okay, or else don't do anything, just stand and watch the death of 5 people and do nothing about it. What would you do? Change the track? Okay, I can see some nods. Good. There are people who can decide. Believe me, you should be opinionated. Don't you think so? You should always have your say, your opinion. Whenever in a big conference like this, or in a classroom, or in a group discussion, wherever, you should make your point. So, what do you say? Would you change the switch? Raise hands who would change the switch. Fine, so many of you. So, it's okay to kill one, to save 5. We'll come to that. Madam has a lateral thinking and appreciate that. But is it okay to kill one? Of course not. But is it okay to let the trolley kill the 5? That's also not okay. Right. So what Madam said is we'll try to convey, first shout out loud or do some noise, bring out the attention. But in case it is not possible, what is the whole thing? I don't know the answer. Okay. There are so many twists and tales. People have brought up so many situations. Someone said, throw a fat man, whether it is ethical to kill one fat man and things like that. I won't go into the details of that. But what I want to try to bring to your notice is when you're in a situation like this, there is a crossroad, you don't know what to do, which is right or wrong. We don't know, right? At this point, we don't know whether to kill one person, save 5, or do nothing. Is right or wrong, we are not sure. Are we? In such situations, we call it as a, anyone can tell me what do we call this? Sorry? A little louder, please. Mercy killing, okay. But no, we are not trying to kill anyone. We call this situation as an ethical dilemma. You agree? Ethical dilemmas are situations when you are probably the investigator and you have a situation wherein you want to enroll a participant with some problem. He is in need of participation, but you don't know whether the participation would harm him or benefit him. You understand my point? So this is what I'm trying to bring to your minds, bring to your notice, that what we are going to discuss is a part of this story, which is as an ethical dilemma. Who doesn't know Dolly? Anyone can tell me who doesn't know? You remember Dolly, right? The first cloned mammal, but the speciality was it was cloned from an adult somatic cell. Cloning did happen, but they are all from embryonic cells. But this one was the famous sheep, which was Dolly the sheep, cloned for the first time ever from a somatic cell. What was the problem then? What happened to cloning after this? Anyone has an idea? What happened to cloning was they didn't know whether this animal will survive. Who is going to take care of this animal? What if there are so many other health problems associated with the genetic makeup that was tailored so well to have a mammal like this? All ended up being mercy killing. Yes, here is what mercy killing happened. Finally, this sheep was euthanized because of the critical lung problem that it developed during its very short period of life on this land. So we all started thinking that we would have clones. Radhika would be cloned. I would have another Radhika just beside me, and I don't know what I would do if she is doing something else like me. Okay, people wouldn't know who the real Radhika was, right? So that was what was happening to cloning then. So this was another issue which came up during research as an ethical dilemma. So am I trying to tell you don't clone? Am I trying to tell you don't do research because of such ethical issues? No. So what I'm trying to tell you now is whenever you have such ethical issues related to whatever type of clinical research you're gonna do, how you try to, change the situation for the benefit of the researcher as well as the participant. Okay. Now, this case slightly deviates from our discussion, but it is one of the important kind of situations which I wanted to bring to your notice. What happened on December 4th, 2017, on a beach in Miami, United States, was this man, a 70-year-old, with diabetes, lung disease, and a cardiac problem, was found unconscious by a safety crew. Right, the beach crew found him unconscious without any identifiable details. They didn't know who this man was, but with a big permanent tattoo on his chest stating what? DNR, don't resuscitate, or do not resuscitate. So finally what happened, I would cut the long story short, they didn't know what to do because he was unconscious, his alcohol levels were high, his sugar levels were high, he had some sort of infection, and he had lung and some myocardial infarction, or say whatever the cardiac problems. So in such a situation, he definitely was admitted. They didn't know what to do with him, but they did treat him. They didn't resuscitate him. They just allowed him to go to whatever condition he had with the basic management for his diabetes, hypertension, lung disease, all of it. But when he needed end of life resuscitation, say CPR or ventilation, all of that was not done. What did they do was respect his decision of having this permanent tattoo. Which 70-year-old mature man would like to tattoo like that on his chest? It would have been a thoughtful decision. Am I not right? Therefore, this is what is an ethical decision which was taken. So again, with this example, I want to bring to your notice, the young minds especially, that ethical issues can happen at any moment during your research. And they can be as sensitive as this case. And therefore, a very perfect, good decision matters when you are a researcher of principal importance. You are the principal investigator and you have a team with you, and therefore such decisions are very, very tricky, but equally important. So what I would discuss are these. So in the session of whatever 50 minutes to 1 hour that has been allotted to me, I would bring to your notice these 4-5 important points. I will tell you briefly about the definition of ethics, bioethics, very briefly, so that at the moment you step out of this room for lunch, you have at least few ideas about what ethics and bioethics are, what happened during the historical times which led to the development of these principles right now in practice. Then I'll also tell you some important documents which are a must know to all of you, what we call them as GCP guidelines, and finally what happens in our country in terms of ethical issues in research by ICMR, that is Indian Council of Medical Research code or guidelines. So we will discuss one by one. What is ethics? Now, many of definitions have been given. You're able to see these slides, right? Though the font size, is it visible to the last pen? Okay, that's very nice. So there are many definitions, like WHO has given one. There is Board of Medical Ethics which has given one. What I would try to make a point is, remember, ethics is when you want to decide upon what is moral. What is moral? Distinguish between right and wrong. When you have to decide what is right for your participant, what is right for your team of research, is when ethics is defined. Clear? So what is ethics? When you actually have to give importance to values, when you have to give importance to standards, then what you importance to decisions of morality and behavior, when you have to conduct yourself morally, ethically, right, is what is ethics. So when the decision between right and wrong has to be taken, the importance of ethics holds good. Am I clear? You don't have to mug up all these definitions just for your research point of view. Remember, decision making between right and wrong is what is termed as ethics. What is bioethics then? It is the study of, please make a note of those underlined words, controversial ethical situations which come up during new situations made by advanced biology and medicine. So that's what we are here to discuss about, isn't it? Whenever we talk about advances in new drug therapies, new medical devices, any new dosage forms that are released into the market, that's when we take up clinical research. And rightly said, when the research is based on biological products, is when bioethics come into picture. So whenever ethics deals with biology, bioethics deals with clinical research, clinical data management, clinical allocation, research allocation, public health, and nursing. So whenever we talk about these areas of research, we talk about bioethics. So the decision, or if at all, again, the carry home message, when do I think about bioethics? For participants of clinical research, when should they think about bioethics? When you have to answer three important questions. What are those? What is to be done? Morally right, morally acceptable. When you have to answer this question, you are a researcher, principal investigator. If my study is morally right, morally acceptable by the participants of the society, if that answer you have to make, then think about bioethics. When you have to take a decision of justifying what you did, why you conducted the study, why you are taking up a clinical trial, is when you have to answer that question, bioethics. When you have to tell us how you would do, what method would you use to find out some study result in a clinical trial, is when bioethics. So in toto, bioethics involving human subjects in a clinical trial, using ethical details to find out the answer to a particular research question, is when we use bioethics. I hope I'm clear. So research involving ethics on human beings. So then who is a human subject? If we are talking about clinical trials using human participants in a trial, then who the participant should be? A human subject. Who is a human subject? All of us know this, but just again, to correlate things that I'm going to discuss further, human subject is when you are trying to enroll a person in a clinical trial and the investigator will collect information from this participant in the form of data, any identifiable information through intervention and interaction, be it a questionnaire, be it just a demographic detail, just an interview, just an intervention in the form of an injection, an oral medication, a topical cream, a spray, be it any type of it. Okay, if you are enrolling a human participant, you collect the data or interview or just don't do anything but still question him or her, then it's a human subject. You getting my point? So do any smallest of things in a clinical trial with the human being, that person becomes a human subject in our trial. So whenever there is a human being in a clinical trial, when we have human subjects, we need to follow these 5 principles of research ethics. I'm going a little quick because the last part is more important than this. So these are the 5 principles which probably holds good in any type of research that you're going to take up in your future. The first one is the principle of autonomy. If I am your human subject in your clinical trial, before taking up any type of trial, you have to give me, the human subject, the authority, the right to decide, the freedom to decide whether I want to enroll in your study or no. The freedom to decide by the participant is called the principle of autonomy. You get my point? So the participant is free to enroll, not to enroll. Even if enrolls, can quit anytime in between. That's patient autonomy. And how do we do that? By taking voluntary informed consent. Right? I'll come to that. The second principle is principle of beneficence. What is beneficence? Do everything for the benefit of your participant. Whatever be the risk, it should be made a point that the risk is to be minimum and the benefit for the participant in your clinical trial is maximum. So risk benefit ratio, benefiting the person the most, is what is the law of beneficence. Third is non-maleficence, very simple, do no harm. To your participants, they are entitled to completely no harm by the investigator. I mean, in terms of your study protocol, in terms of any ADR which can happen because of the new drug, or because of any other intervention, be it moral, physical, personal, any type of harm is not warranted during the clinical trial, and that is the principle of non-maleficence. Then comes the principle of justice. Remember that every participant in your clinical trial, irrespective of age, gender, caste, religion, economic status, literacy status, color, anything doesn't matter. All your participants are to be treated equally by every one of you, whoever is the investigator. You get my point? That is the principle of justice, as simple as that. That is, treat all your participants equally. That's the fourth principle. The fifth principle is definitely of very importance. That is research merit and integrity. This is the principle specific for research ethics. In medical ethics, we have two more principles which are very similar to this. That is, the researcher, the investigator, whoever is going to take up the trial, has to have that particular experience, the merit to conduct the research. That means a researcher should be qualified to conduct a clinical trial. Only then he or she should be the principal investigator, part of the investigating team, to make sure that they are trained well enough. Also, integrity. What do we mean by that? You must have read that in reels and quotations, no? If no one is observing you, do right things even then. Right? Even if there is no observation, nobody is looking at you, and you don't cheat yourself, is what is integrity. Right? So a person involved in a clinical trial should always be honest, always be sincere, is what is the principle of research integrity. You get my point? So just to again tell you, these 2 points are very, very similar to that. The principle of veracity and fidelity, more so with your dealing with patients for that matter. Veracity is being truthful. Be always truthful to the study patients. Tell them whatever is the outcome, whatever the patient's outcome, be truthful. Don't be scared to break a bad news, say are about to die or the cancer is spreading, whatever the thing be truthful in informing them. Be fidel. Fidelity, infidelity is more famous than fidelity nowadays. Fidelity is being honest. Be very honest. Be available whenever the patient or the participant needs you. Am I clear? So the 5 principles in research ethics: principle of autonomy of freedom, do benefits always, do no harm always, be just and equal to everyone, have research merits, and have integrity. Excuse me. Now, this takes me to the stage where I have to tell you some ghastly stories. Ghastly in the sense they are really that bad. What happened in the history makes us, kind of regret that we lived in a society like that. Definitely not you and me, but there were people who lived then. There were some studies which were done during World War II. Heard of this? The Nazi experiments. The prisoners of World War II were treated like guinea pigs. They were just dumped in prisons, given what and what not, never looked after, allowed to die with bleeding, with no painkillers, nothing at all, just to see what the new drugs did to them. They just wanted to see how the drugs work. There were no concepts of research at that time, and this was the only research which was done. Something similar also happened for 40 long years. From 1932 to 72, there was something called as a Tuskegee trial, wherein syphilitic patients, you've heard of syphilis, right? It's a sexually transmitted, to know how a normal human being would die with syphilis. We just wanted to know the natural course of the disease. How human beings from day one of getting syphilis till the day of death, they would suffer. Can you believe it? Days like that existed when they just wanted to see this. For 40 years, 600 patients, even though penicillin was discovered, nobody got penicillin. So they were mainly Negro males who were enrolled in this study. Can you believe that? So one more was when this was, you can see here, this was Mengele, Dr. Mengele's experiment. He was called the angel of death. Why was he called so? He would pick up twins and he would just see genetic similar individuals. How would they respond to drugs? That was what was happening back then. There's so many like that. I've just picked up one or two. Willybrook Hospital hepatitis study was when healthy school children were given infected stools in their food just to see how hepatitis manifested in healthy individuals, healthy children. This is not it. There are so many stories like this which happened, which led to the development of what we now called as code of ethics. Aren't these stories bad? We were a part of society like that when research had this black face. These were those Nazi prisoners. You can see stacked up prisoners here. I'm sorry, I couldn't get a clear picture, but you can see all these, war prisoners being put piled up one above the other. You can see here they didn't even know who these people are. So this is how dark the history is, and this led to the development of all these rules that we call them now as ethics. If it was Food and Drug Administration Council, which developed in 1906 to have this Tuskegee study, which Nazi experiments, this led to what you have to take home, these four important words. First one being Nuremberg Code, what you see here from 1947. Then came the Belmont Report. Then came the ICH GCP guidelines, and now we have ICMR. So these were the important declarations, rules, ethical conduct decisions which were taken after so many things went wrong in our historical setup of research. So am I making that point clear? Because bad things happened, rules were set up. So how does it matter? Do you remember, do you have to know all this as a pharmacy graduate, that everything of this code you need to know? So to make things easier, I would just like to remind 3-4 things. I know that is not clear. So I just want you to remember from the Nuremberg Code, we need to remember that obtaining informed consent is of paramount importance. What does Nuremberg Code tell us? Informed consent from a participant is important. What Belmont report tells us, not only that the informed consent is important, if you are involving what is called as vulnerable patients, I'll come to that. If you are involving vulnerable population in your list of study of participants, you have to think of ethical issues. What is ICH-GCP? I'll come to that also. It says now that you are into the stepping stone area from starting of the research, right from designing, enrolling, methodology, reporting, data management, maintenance of the data, and publication and release of the product into the market, all that has to be monitored from the ethical point of view. Am I clear? So what are the 4 things that you need to remember? The Belmont report, the Nuremberg Code, ICH GCP guidelines, and the ICMR. They all talk about being ethical whenever you're researching. Informed consent is important from the participants. Involving patients, especially of vulnerable category, needs to be looked upon from ethical point of view. Right from designing till execution and the final clinical trial data which is collected, you have to think from every ethical angle is what the end message is from all these codes. Simple, understandable. If you read the books which have this, it's so very difficult to understand. So these are the few important things. What are those guidelines which I just mentioned to you? These are the 3. So Declaration of Helsinki. Helsinki is the name of the place in Finland where the first conference was held. So it was called the Declaration of Helsinki. It talks about risk-benefit ratio and all of those informed consent details. Then the conference of this word, I don't know how many times you will keep listening to. Have you all heard of this ICH GCP, ICH GCP? We keep hearing. So what's that? International Conference of Harmonization, now called International Council of Harmonization, after an update in 2006. It talks about everything: quality assurance, efficacy, safety management, and all multidisciplinary things that you do in your clinical research, all to be looked from ethical point of view. Finally, the GCP guidelines, which are of very much of importance now. In different countries, we have different ones. WHO is a blanket guideline. However, in India, we follow ICMR. Okay, so these 3 important terminologies, apart from Nuremberg Code and Belmont Report, are the take home words from the session today. Right. So I have been referring to who is a vulnerable participant. Who are vulnerable populace? What do we mean by that? You can just read this list. Whoever is old above 60 years, whoever is a pediatric patient, whoever is a pregnant lady, a breastfeeding mother, all of those mentally disabled, sick people, unconscious persons, prisoners, illiterates, economically poor strata of persons, all of them. Most importantly, this one. If my teacher is doing a clinical trial, if he or she requests me as a PhD student to enroll in the clinical study, not as a co-investigator, but as a participant, then I am a vulnerable populace. You getting my point? Why? Because he or she, my teacher, won't pass or fail me. No, that is why. You get my point? So vulnerable populace is more endangered species in the terms that they would be having the maximum risk of harm. You get my point? So if at all your new product in your clinical trial, new intervention of your clinical trial is going to harm the patient more in this category, in the vulnerable category, then you will have to think about more of ethical viewpoints. So what did we discuss till now? Quickly, 1 or 2 points that you remember. What did we discuss till now? We discussed what is ethics, what is bioethics, right? What did we discuss next? Yes? Principles of ethics. Yes, what are those 5 principles? Autonomy, beneficence, non-maleficence, justice, research merit and integrity. Fantastic. Then we also discussed why these rules were developed for a human subject. That is those dark points what we discussed. And finally, we discussed timeline of development of those reports. What are those 5 reports you need to remember, or codes of conduct? Nuremberg Code, Belmont Report, ICH-GCP, ICMR. So these are a few things must know, especially when we are talking about vulnerable populace. Right. Now let me read this and you tell me what you would do if you are in this situation. Imagine you are a postgraduate in your institute and you're trying to, you would routinely visit the hospital for ADR collection. I hope you know what's pharmacovigilance, collection of adverse drug reactions from the hospital whenever you have one. So you are routinely doing this work, and at one point of time you find a very interesting rare case on your rounds whenever you are a part of pharmacovigilance team, and you think that it should be shared with the whole society, it should be published because it has a lot of research interest, something very new, and it will help in scientific progress. Now what you do is you try to publish it, but without the consent of the patient. You have already seen that the patient has been discharged. You have all the demographic details. You have the patient's pictures. You know which drug caused it. All the details required, because we have to, kind of upload it in the VG flow, isn't it? So now that you have everything and you have it in your mind to publish, can you go ahead without consent of the patient? Does it need institutional ethical committee approval? So what do you say? I have 3 questions here. For the first question, how many of you say yes, the PG can publish it? Only 1 person feels it can be published. Only 4 can feel, no others, no opinion. I don't know. If you don't raise hands, then I'll think, it's okay, I don't know. So if you raise hands, yes. If you don't, if you don't raise your hand, then a no. What do you feel? Should the postgraduate, whoever it is, can he or she publish or no? Okay, let's come to the second question. Is consent of the patient needed? Case report, publication as a case report. Should we take the consent of the patient? All of you agree? Raise hands who don't agree. Okay, great. So all of you agree. So does it need IEC approval? So all of you agree it needs approval. So if we didn't have the answers to the, if the answers to the second and third question was a no, then would you believe that the PG could publish it? No. That means for all the 3, that is for all the 3 questions, only when we have the patient consent, when we have IEC approval, can we go ahead with this. right? So these situations in your career would come up very often once you are a clinical research, in a part of a CRO. Then you will have to probably look into these guidelines. Who will take you there? Who will guide you in such decision making is GCP. That is good clinical practice. So what I've tried to do here is jot down a very few important points. What is GCP? It's a set of internationally recognized guideline which talks about ethical scientific quality requirements to be observed during the whole process of trials involving human subjects. Simple, isn't it? So the rules which would guide all of you as investigators to conduct an ethically sound trial. As simple as that. So whatever you have to do ethically right will be guided by GCP. Where does it hold good? For all types of drugs, biologics, and medical devices. What does it talk about? Broadly divided into two principles. I'm now talking about GCP principles. The first one gives protection to the human subjects, that is the basic human right of the subject. Second, developing or collecting authentic biomedical data for documentation. So GCP talks about rights of the human subject in a trial. Second, generating authentic data. Simple. So GCP guidelines tell us these two things. Protect your patients, collect good data. Who does the monitoring? Whether GCP is being followed by all investigators sitting here, who will look after that? There is a committee called Institutional Ethics Committee, or IRB. Have you heard of this? What does IRB stand for? Great. Institutional Review Board. So who is bound by GCP guidelines? The sponsor, the investigator, the protocol designer, the investigator brochure designer, informed consent process developer, the one who collects the informed consent, and other important documents. So every staff involved, every person involved in the trial is bound by the GCP guidelines. In India, who tells us what to do with these guidelines is the ICMR. For every step of biomedical research, we need to follow GCP. So what is it? How do I simplify? Remember, I'm going to tell you two principles today. That means one of GCP and one of ICMR. In the GCP, there are 13 principles. This is an odd number. Many of them consider unlucky, but then for me, it's neutral. But what I wanted to make a point is 13 is the number for ICH GCP guidelines. So these 13 core principles, how are they defined as, or how are they enumerated? Ethics. The first principle of any trial is an ethical principle. Therefore, the first topic of your conference is also an ethical principles. Ethics, always your trial should be having all ethically sound details right from the beginning till the end. I've spoken about it. Second, risk benefit. Didn't I tell you? Risk minimization, benefit should be maximum. Take care of your study participants, secure them, they should be safe in your hands. Any kind of ADR, any kind of mismanagement, any kind of problem with the patient's participant develop, you are the one responsible, take care of them. Whenever you're doing a drug trial, remember that you should know each and every aspect of the drug. Everything about the drug should be known to you. Next, good quality trial. Design your trial such that it has highest quality. It should be authentic in all terms. Have action plan A and B. If A is not working, switch to B. So your quality trial, the quality of the protocol should be equally good. The protocol should be approved by Institutional Review Board or the IEC before you begin. All treatment decisions, anything goes wrong with the participant, or even during allocation of your patients into various groups, should be done by a qualified doctor, qualified physician or a surgeon, depending on the type of trial that you're looking for. Then all your staff, be it technical or the investigating team, should be trained in GCP. You should always take an informed voluntary consent. I'll talk about this because it's important a little later. Then there is collection of trial data. Remember, trial data should be very, very meticulously documented, carefully maintained, and saved in your data bank. It should be available at least for 5 to 10 years. It should always be retrievable. You get my point? So maintaining the data is also equally important. Maintain confidentiality of your patients. Remember not to disclose any of your details of the participants to anyone outside your clinical circle. I need to say research circle. Whatever drug product you are trying to research upon, any new drug, any new intervention, make what is that quality product. Do repeated checks. During your trial, you all should go back and see everything is working fine or no. You always know your protocol is the best. You're always looking up to your study colleagues, but then always remember to do a quality check. So maintain quality assurance checks always and to be continued very often. Any questions here? This is one of the most slide for you all to take home. Remember, the 13 GCP guidelines are of paramount importance to be maintained throughout your study cycle. I mean, clinical study cycle. Clear, right? So that was about GCP. So I told you one of the important principles of GCP is voluntary consent. Please bear with me. It has a few points which are very important. This is the most important document of your clinical trial. It can be a written informed consent or an AV consent, audio-visual, but always voluntary. Don't force any participant to give consent nor to involve in the study. It should be in the language understood by the participant. The participant should be explained about the study in the local language or the language which the patient participant understands, right? It should contain all accurate, culturally sensitive information. There are a set of group of people who are not okay with the questions you're going to ask. So remember not to make them uncomfortable. Be very careful with the language of your consent form. Be carefully typed and distributed. Before any type of questions from your consent or from your study, take IC approval. The Institutional Ethics Committee would also ask you a copy of consent form. All signatures should be on board, that is from the subject, from the investigator. Okay, these two words you probably as a researcher, you should take signatures of who is called as an impartial witness. Can anyone in the crowd tell me who is an impartial witness? During a clinical trial, you are in a process of taking an informed consent. Who would be an impartial witness? Options, okay? Say person A, Dr. A is the principal investigator. Dr. B is the co-investigator. There are two more research associates. There is a participant by Mr.